Trapped by the belief that I'm not good enough, bound by the limitations and the lies that consumed my world, this was me. It wasn't until I took the biggest leap in my life to know and trust the power within. And it was at that moment I made a choice. My past will not define me anymore. Hello, I am Teri Cardula, and I know I am not alone in this. Over the years, I have found that the number one mistake that we make is that we get in the way of our own success story. Yes, I said it. On this show, together we'll tackle limiting beliefs, self sabotage, getting stuck, fear, doubt, overwhelm, and the imposter syndrome. Join us on this journey designed to transport you beyond your limitations to a world where anything is possible. This is Talking with Teri. Hello, and welcome back to Talking with Teri, where we have powerful conversations to transform your life and your business. And our guest today, Lorraine Schuchart, is here. She's the founder of Prosper for Purpose, the brand and PR agency designed for courageous change makers. Oh, I love that. The company holds the prestigious B Corporation Certification, meeting the highest standards. So I can't wait to dive in and hear a little bit more about you. Lorraine, thank you for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Terry. I'm really excited about this conversation, and I
Yeah,
love your focus with the podcast. So I'm really honored to be here.
yeah. So let's hop in and let's bring the listeners up to speed as far as how did you get to be where you're at today with this PR firm?
Well, I was a reluctant entrepreneur. So I think for me, there was a big block about being a business owner and feeling worthy and all of the stuff that comes with that. So, when I went to school, we were taught that if you wanted to go into PR and make money, you better go work for corporate. And if you wanted to make a difference, you better go work for a nonprofit. And so I jumped right out of school into nonprofit work and was making like no money, like not really enough money to live on. Um, but stayed there for a couple of years and really got to do some great things. And then went to for profit. And that became kind of my routine for, it's strange to say, but like almost 30 years, right? Working and just going back and forth. And what I learned from that was that I really identified and was called by the missions of nonprofits and how they just had this vision and this purpose and they were always in pursuit of it. I loved that. It really spoke to my soul. But things moved so slowly and I felt like and it was from my business side that I could see paths that would allow us to do this instead of doing,
Right, shortcut it,
the
yeah.
windy. Yeah. And so then I go back to the for-profit world and I did this for a long time and I actually ended up at Joanne Fabric and Craft stores and retail is like a whole different beast even than business. And it was a wonderful experience for me. And what was so great about it is it was the first time in a corporate setting that I was allowed to bring kind of my nonprofit soul to it. And so, of course, there was a philanthropic perspective and there were organizations that we were involved in, but I really got to take that grassroots and do a lot of local things when we were opening or remodeling stores, and I really loved that. And from there, I was a founding member of the diversity cabinet, and this was back when we had the big recession, so 2008. That's when I was there, and what I realized through that recession was that people were really loyal to the brand. And we were also in a great opportunity because that's when staycation became a thing.
Mhm.
And Joanne did well during that time because people were really honing in on things they could do with their children and at home and all of that. But for me, it was kind of like the first, well, literally like the first time I thought, wow, there is a way to weave in my passion into a business. So after almost 3 years, I left there. I had one more job. Even though at that point I had thought about, what could that look like if I could find a place that was solely dedicated and had the same vision that I did. And I couldn't find it, and I ended up taking another job, and it was not a good experience, and I just felt like I was getting this nudge, right? Like, you have this kernel or
Mhm.
the seed inside of you, and it's like, nope, this is not going to work out for you because this is not your path. This is not
Yeah.
where you are meant to
Yeah.
be. But I really had to get over myself, even in well, I guess in my 20s and then again in my 30s, I had time where I was having children, and I took a little bit of time off, and I was freelancing, and I was worried about it getting too big. I mean, looking back, we see it,
Mhm.
right? But
Yeah.
I had some serious mindset issues
Yeah.
that I wasn't going to be able to do it. Who was I to think I could run a business? But I ended up leaving that last
Well,
position in 2012, and and then just move forward.
Well, I think I want to pause for a second and just kind of go back into that because I think so many times we can hold ourselves back from growth. And I think this is a great topic because I don't think we've talked about it in this capacity before about, just really like that fear of like, oh my gosh, what if this is successful? Oh my gosh, what if this becomes too big? I remember when I was on my first time in doing Facebook Lives, and this was like, I don't know, 5 years ago. And
Yeah.
it was really intense because, of course, you're trying to have a conversation. It's very stimulating. It's like you have all this, like, you have people like typing in and it was coming up really fast, and you have people liking and then loving. And then it's like, and you're looking at the screen and like you have all this activity and you're trying to keep it straight, your thoughts straight, right? And it was so distracting. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is too overwhelming. Oh my gosh, what if this gets really big? And I'm like, oh, and you know what happened? And you know what happened? Like, I shut it down. Like, not, I kept showing up on Facebook
Oh,
Lives, but energetically, I'm like, oh my gosh, it was too overwhelming. I can't do that. And so it changed that, right? And I keep thinking back to this, and this is exactly what you said. It was like, oh my gosh, like this is, what if it gets too big? What if it goes viral? What if this, what if? And that can be that process, that thought process can actually shut off the energy. And it's really, it can be really scary. And so I was telling someone yesterday, I said, it's usually the fear of success more so than in reality what we tell ourselves. It's the fear of failure, right? It is more the success
yeah.
piece of it that scares the bejeebers out of us. But I think this is a really great valid point. So I'm curious for you, obviously looking back, we have 2020, but what what would you have liked to have done differently? If you had the wherewithal, what would you have liked to have done differently?
That's a great question, but I think I've come to the point where I don't know that I would have been ready earlier. I think that
Mhm.
things sometimes happen the way they're supposed to happen. I
Yeah.
did have two young children and went through a divorce, and I would not have had the mental or physical energy to start a company at that point. So for me, I think it happened at the right time. And
And
um
I
and
agree
so
with
I'm
you on that. Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think sometimes, we are placed in positions. I always say, I think, gosh, our universe is so well orchestrated, right? And, sometimes we get a taste of it for a seed that gets planted. It's like, and then we get to work through it or work around it or work over it or whatever that might be for us until we come back to where we're ready for it. And so that's a beautiful way to say that.
Thanks.
So what so going back into this, like the thought process, and was that kind of your biggest challenge that you had overcome, is getting you prepared for business? Because again, like, business world is, I don't think there's anything like it. I really don't. Like, I just think, there's nothing like, really doing your own thing. And when you sign up for that, I think we're really naive in what we're really signing up for, the whole package. We're like, no, I just wanted to sign up for this one little thing. And you get the whole package instead. So again, just, for your kind of your piece, how did you work through some of those mindset challenges that you had?
I think for me, it came from my children. So by the time I
Mm,
started my business, my girls were young adults, and I had that little nudge in my gut saying you should do this, and they were both home. I think it was over a holiday when they were in school, and I was talking about, I just can't find the place I want to work. I need to resign. I need to do this. And my older daughter turned to me and said, "Mom, why don't you just start that business? Why are you looking to work for someone else? You know what you want. Why don't you?" Excuse
bless
me, I'm
you.
sorry.
No worries.
Why don't you do that? Allergies, spring allergies. Um, and I just thought, okay, everything is pointing this direction. Everything is telling me this is what I'm supposed to do. So I'm just going to do it. And that's when I made the decision. So I was hearing the sign with it, having the sign within me, but it was really that everything was showing me that that's what I needed to do. And I think sometimes that happens, but not always. I think in my case that maybe it was me putting obstacles in my own way. I have faith. Maybe it was God putting obstacles in my way so that the only choice was to actually go forward and do the damn thing. So that's what I
Exactly.
did.
Exactly. And again, going back to the nudge, listening to the nudges, and if we don't listen to them, they get stronger and louder, and so I do believe that when we are placed with that nudge, um, universe, God, spirit, angels, universal life force, energy, whatever you want to call it, will not, it is relentless. It will not give up until you fully big, okay, fine, and I love telling people, like, when we are listening to those, just we may not have the full picture yet, but if
Mhm.
nothing else, just put pen to paper and write them down. It may come to fruition and it may not. It may be a year later, it may be 6 years later. But just putting pen to paper to those, those little nudges, and be like, what is this? What is this? What is my body trying to tell me? What is soul trying to tell me? What am I hearing? What am I receiving? Because those messages come in so many different forms. It could be a conversation, it could be this podcast, it could be, an email, a text. It can come in so many different forms, or just meeting random people at random places, so listening to those nudges is really important. And of course it's terrifying. Of course it's terrifying to listen.
Yeah, I like to say that your heart can steer you wrong. Your head, your brain can steer you wrong, but your gut never steers you wrong.
That's so good. That's so good. I love that. And so listening to your
Yeah,
gut, like, let's.
yeah. We have reactions that we can't even explain, right? And when we get in our head and we're trying to rationalize, or does this work on paper, especially starting a business, the answer is usually a resounding no. It doesn't make sense, right? It's a leap of faith. We make decisions with our heart. If you've ever had made a bad romantic choice, we all know our heart can lead us astray. But when you listen to your gut, your heart's tugging, and you in a certain way, maybe your brain is saying no, and you've got like this tension going on. That's when you really need to listen to your gut. What's your gut telling you? And my gut was telling me that you need to be all in on this. If you're going to do it, you have to be all in. And
Yeah,
so that's what I did. Quit my job, and 2 months later, I had a couple of clients.
that's awesome. And now you've really created this really powerful company that is really moving and shaking. So tell us, because PR is, I love when right before we hopped on, I'm like, oh my gosh, like being seen and heard is like that's my jam. I love getting people, to that place where, because there's so much mind stuff that gets in the way of us really stepping into our power and authentic, selves, and really owning that. And so what tips or strategies do you have with someone, and this can be, some of the listeners are going to be just like putting their toe in and be like, I'm just experimenting with this. And then we have some people that are all the way in and they're, on stages, they're really having a presence. And even, the folks that are like now mentoring other people to bring them up into the spotlight. So what would you share? Like, what's a good nugget that you could share with someone, no matter where they're at in their journey?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it starts with your purpose. What we can have multiple purposes. So I'll just kind of break this down. This is my philosophy. I knew from a very young age that one of my purposes in life was to have children. I just always knew. It wasn't something I assumed because that's what you typically did. It was something I wanted. I just knew from the time I was like 10 years old, like, oh, I can't wait to be a mom. And we go to church, and the kid in the pew in front of us would reach out to me from his father's arms for me to take him. So there was something going on, even from a young age. I had that like really maternal side to me. Um, but I also knew that I wanted to share stories with the world from the time I was probably around fourth grade. I started writing. I had a wonderful teacher, and I knew that was a purpose, but I didn't know what it would look like. And a lot of times for people, going back to what did you know that you absolutely had to do before people told you what your life should look like, what you
Mhm.
should do, right?
Mhm.
And a
That's
lot of
good.
times we can find that thread right there. But then the next step is, when you start your business, what's the purpose of that business that's beyond profit? Businesses fail. And I think, again, personal opinion, that a lot of businesses fail because the founder doesn't have a purpose that is bigger than profit. They don't have a purpose about the impact that they want to make on the world. And I think that if you can create that purpose for your business that's bigger than profit, and then you can show up authentically with a powerful message. So I think those are two keys. And then, from a PR perspective, there's two schools of thought. One is that you start small and you go to local outlets, and then regional, and then go national. And then there's another school of thought that says that you go for the big publications. And my opinion is that neither is exactly true. That you want to start by getting in front of other people's audiences. I actually think podcasts is the best place for people to start. And number two, I think, would be guest appearances, like in masterminds and groups and speaking on stages, and getting publicity that way. So when someone looks you up, and I'm telling clients this right now, if I'm writing for, I don't know, the New York Times, or I'm writing for, let's say, Fast Company, I'm gonna Google you. I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
those reporters want to see what's available. And if all that comes up is your website and your LinkedIn, no, you've got to have some credibility before you go to those big outlets. And so that's what I would say. I would say think about like where you can be a guest in front of other people's audiences.
Yeah. And it can start small. Like I started off, with a small company, a small television company down about an hour from my house. And it has grown and grown and grown to the where I've become like a regular on their show. And then they had a cancellation, and they just reached out to me like, can you come on? Can you come on in an hour? And I'm like, yeah, I can. And so just because, and I told my daughter, I was like, how rare that is to have a media company reach out to you. It just doesn't happen. And as you can probably attest to the power of that. And I said, I ended up crying because I was like, I just had like tears of
Oh,
joy because I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, and then my daughter's like, are you okay? I'm like, oh, yes. And she's like, are you okay? And I'm like, but it's really powerful. And then just last week, actually yesterday, no, what is today? Today's Friday. On Wednesday of
today's
this
Friday.
week, it's Friday. On Wednesday of this week, had a producer from another show that I've never been on. called me and said, let's connect. And I had already sent a segment proposal to her. So I was like, that's weird, because usually we just do everything via email. And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
sure. I'll reach out to her. And she's known me because I was on her show like maybe about 12 years ago. She was producing another show. And it was interesting. She reached out to me and she goes, we have a regular expert position segment, I guess. And that person has left the show and we want to highlight you. And I've never even been on the show. And they want to offer
That's
me
awesome.
the regular twice a month showing. And it's not just 5 minutes, it's not 3 minutes, it's a 30-minute segment twice a month. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, and so
That's
again,
amazing.
it's been
Yeah,
2
that's
years in the
really good.
making, but it's amazing to see like what, and you're absolutely right, when you're showing up, you never know what you're going to be exposed to. And again, I echo what you said, is that people are going to Google you and see. And what was interesting is like, she's like, I've been following you for the last 2 years on social media. And
Yeah.
she goes, I see your Facebook lives and you're always showing up, and I was like, really? And it was so interesting to get her perspective, because I was like, I'm thinking this coming out of the blue, but it's really interesting. So again, putting yourself out there, starting, and I agree with you that podcasting is incredible, because you get to hone your message, you get to practice, you get to start playing with things. And really, if you think about this, I'm going to say this to you and everyone else who's listening, it really is an opportunity for you to start practicing, if you're going to do sound bites, or if you're going to start, and you can start practicing it here and see how it lands, and if it lands well, then you can take it, to bigger outlets with you, which is great. So, and I think that
Yeah.
the pieces about getting out there, being seen, being heard, because I truly believe you cannot have a household name with being the best kept secret. I mean,
No, you
we can't,
can't.
the Mel Robbins of the world, the Tony Robbins of the world, the Jack Canfields, the Sarah Blakely's of the world, like, we know them, they have a household name, and we know, like, and trust them, so we purchase with them because they're not a secret. And in
right.
order for us to be seen and have a bigger impact, going back into your purpose, like, if you want to have your purpose matter and have a bigger impact, whatever that level is for you, you got to be seen, you got to be heard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love it.
Absolutely. I love that. It sounds like you're a PR expert over there. I love what
any
you're saying. And so
final
good. It's
tips
so
and
true,
tricks? Yeah, any final tips and tricks that we can, share with our listeners on?
Yeah, I think that the final tips that I would say is to be really clear on why you're doing what you're doing. So if you're pursuing a specific outlet, and this is a big mistake that I have seen people make, they're just pursuing it because they saw someone else featured there, right? And so it's really about, are you pursuing a particular outlet because that's where your potential clients are, or are you pursuing that outlet because you want to put their logo on your website? Now, either's fine,
Yeah.
but just be really clear, because we're not immune from the bright shiny object syndrome. Who wouldn't want to
Yeah.
be featured in the major publications, right? But
Yeah.
you can spend so much energy. And what is the best thing that can happen? You can put that logo on your website, or you could spend typically a lot less energy and have a logo that maybe is not quite top tier, but maybe you got 10 new clients.
Yeah.
And so again, know your reason for what you're doing and what the best result is, because I've had people say, I had this story in the New York Times, and I got a lot of comments from people saying it's really cool what you're doing, and not one person wanted to work with me.
Yeah.
And I spent, 20, 40, 60 hours, usually more, pursuing that. And you can't get that time back.
Yeah.
And so
I mean,
it's
that's such a
nice
great,
is getting there.
point, because you talk about, adding in that strategy, like what is your ultimate, target and what you're heading for? And is that going to take you there? And so that's such a great way of reframing that and positioning it in that way. Because sometimes you just go for like, oh, I got to have the name recognition or, whatever,
Yeah.
which is a great reminder, by the way, because I actually don't put the people's stuff on my website. So thank you for that reminder, but I probably should do that.
Do that. You should do that. And it's other ways to serve. So,
Yeah.
the thing is too, if you have a media room, if you are getting that, I'm going to share that I was on your podcast. I want to
Yeah.
give credit to you, but it also shows people like, oh, Lorraine must have something to say. She's been on talking with Teri. And so, you want to be able to share that as well, but also it's serving. And those are other places people can go to hear your wisdom. And
Yeah.
by the time people come into your inner circle and they get on the phone with you or you meet them and they're talking about working with you, they've already decided that you're probably the person they want to work with. And that's
Yeah.
because of all the other things that get them to you. So,
Exactly.
I
That's the real
just,
juice right there. That's the juice. Is like then, and it's not, you don't have to effort. You don't have to quote sell them because they already know you. They've already gotten a taste of you. They've already gotten a piece of your message, your purpose, your passion. And then they're like, oh, I'm going to go work with her. That's juicy. That's juicy. Love it. All right, Lorraine, where can people connect with you and follow you?
yes. So the website is prosperforpurpose.com and four is FOR, or you can find me on Instagram if you can spell my name, which I'm sure will be in the show notes. It's
Yes.
at Lorraine Schuchart. Let me know you heard me, reach out and say hello.
Because it's definitely not said how it looks for sure. I love it.
That's true.
Well, thank you this is fantastic. What such gold nuggets in there. And again, like it's so in alignment because I love helping people just get out there and be seen and heard, by clearing out the blocks. So you and I need to collaborate on some level. Would love to, stay in
Love
touch and find out how we can support each other. Lorraine, thank you so much for your time and your energy and your brilliance that you brought today.
Thanks, Teri. Thanks for having me. It was such an honor to be here with you.
I am so grateful that you joined me for this episode. If you've enjoyed this, then there's just one thing that I would like you to do. Click to subscribe and leave me a rating and review. As my way to thank you, let's connect for a free consultation. Just reach out to me at talkingwithteri, that's TERI.com, to book your time.